She was like, Jacqueline, if they play Getaway Car or Maroon, she's on crisis watch.
Rachel Zegler was once hailed as a Hollywood prodigy, a bright, charismatic performer who seemed poised to become the face of a new generation of movie stars. Her breakout role in West Side Story electrified audiences and industry insiders alike, proving she could captivate the screen with her powerful voice, expressive acting, and undeniable presence. For a moment, she appeared to have it all: critical acclaim, a growing fan base, and big studios vying for her talents. Yet in a matter of months, her carefully built reputation collapsed. Public praise transformed into scathing criticism. Social media turned hostile, and major film projects either quietly dropped her or cut ties in very public ways. How could someone go from celebrated newcomer to Hollywood pariah so quickly? The answer, as it turns out, is a twisted blend of controversy, social media slip-ups, and a shifting industry landscape that has little tolerance for missteps, especially from rising stars. From the beginning, the entertainment world placed high hopes on Rachel, seeing her as a refreshing alternative to the usual Hollywood personalities. She was outspoken, unafraid to tackle big issues, and seemingly eager to push back against traditions she felt were outdated. This attitude, while initially endearing to some fans, gradually morphed into a liability. Executives started noticing how her tweets veered into polarizing territory, and other celebrities, behind closed doors, began whispering about her tendency to clash with creative teams. When Blumhouse Productions, known for turning modestly budgeted horror films into box office juggernauts, cast Rachel in a pivotal role for a new trilogy, they believed her star power would catapult their project into an entirely new realm of success. The plan was to position this trilogy as the next iconic horror franchise, rivaling beloved series like Scream. Early reports hinted at a bold, innovative direction for the movies, with Rachel leading the charge as the central figure across all three films.
What was it like seeing yourself for the first time in full Snow White drag?
I love that description. It's perfect. Oh my God. Well, when you get to wear Sandy Powell, first of all, insane. And then you get to be lit by Mandy Walker.
Fans of both horror and Rachel herself buzzed with anticipation. Then cracks began to show. Insiders revealed that Rachel's social media presence had already raised concerns at the studio. Though initially the executives brushed it off as youthful passion, the bigger issue emerged on set. Rachel, confident in her artistic perspective, reportedly contested multiple decisions made by the producers and writers, requesting extensive rewrites to her character that disrupted the production schedule. While creative input from a lead actor can be invaluable, friction arose when her suggestions clashed with the broader vision for the trilogy. Tension simmered, culminating in behind-the-scenes conflicts that placed an uncomfortable spotlight on her. At the same time, more of her public statements started catching fire online, stirring passionate debate and, in some corners, outright outrage. Her earlier involvement with Disney's upcoming Snow White adaptation had already set a precedent for controversy. Initially, many applauded Disney for reimagining the classic 1937 cartoon with a fresher perspective, especially given Rachel's vocal talents. She was supposed to embody a more contemporary version of the iconic princess, one less tied to old-fashioned tropes. Interviews, however, revealed her blunt opinions about the original film, which she dismissed as outdated and lacking in substance. While progressive fans cheered her honesty, traditionalists felt insulted. They took to social media to attack her perceived disrespect for a beloved classic. In response, Disney tried to smooth over the public backlash, prompting Rachel to apologize. Yet the apology itself felt forced to many, and her stance still rankled large swaths of the audience. She came off as someone who thought she was above the material, or so her critics claimed. All at once, the magic of a fresh Disney reboot lost its sheen, overshadowed by a public relations nightmare that refused to go away. Social media only poured fuel on the fire. Rachel's Twitter feed became a magnet for heated arguments, with every new tweet dissected and debated. Fans urged her to focus on her craft, but Rachel often responded with defiance.
No, and I feel like it was like that for a lot of us. It's easier for me than it was for Tom because I wasn't playing a character that had already existed in the previous films. And those performances are so wonderful that you don't want to try to recreate anything because there's the fear of failing miserably, but also it's 64 years before the original films take place, the original books, and Francis Lawrence, who directed Catching Fire and both Mockingjay films, and Nina, who produced all of the Hunger Games content, they didn't put any pressure on us to try to recreate anything.
Doubling down on her opinions rather than choosing the path of carefully measured statements. It might have been different if her posts stayed mostly positive or benign, but she tackled highly charged political topics and criticized older Hollywood icons, culminating in viral moments that overshadowed anything else she did. Instead of letting her talent speak for itself, she allowed controversies to become the dominant narrative around her name. Some of her supporters believed she was simply using her platform to stand up for her convictions, but the entertainment industry saw an emerging pattern of unpredictability, even recklessness, that could tank a movie's profitability if it became too distracting for audiences. This clash of art, commerce, and personal expression reached a boiling point when Blumhouse abruptly announced they were removing Rachel from their much-hyped horror trilogy. Rumors swirled about exactly what pushed them to take such a drastic step. Many pointed to a series of tweets she made that inflamed public opinion, some of which triggered immediate outcry from fans who threatened to boycott any movie featuring her. Others whispered of on-set disagreements so frequent and intense that the production timeline was in jeopardy. Whatever the final straw, Blumhouse acted swiftly, sending shockwaves throughout Hollywood. People who had once been neutral began publicly questioning Rachel's professionalism. Even those who had defended her before found it increasingly difficult to stand by her when faced with undeniable fallout from both fans and colleagues. The reverberations didn't end with Blumhouse. Disney, already stung by the Snow White fiasco, quietly severed more ties. In the months that followed, headlines revealed her removal from additional projects, including the family-friendly comedy Paddington 3, where her role was reportedly cut just weeks before filming was set to start. Sources said the decision was partly creative and partly about avoiding unnecessary controversy. Although Disney never issued a harshly worded statement, insiders claimed that the studio had grown tired of firefighting every new headline about Rachel. The Snow White premiere performance, once planned as a major showcase for her singing prowess, was also canceled.
The one where he was in the boxing ring.
Boxing ring, and Howard Cosell, who was then a famous announcer for ABC Sports, introduced him. And I was asked at some point to get Mr. Sinatra Listerine. We're at Madison Square Garden. It's not like there's a Listerine store in Madison Square Garden. So I dutifully ran out, found a drugstore of some sort. This is before CVS. This is 45 years ago.
Fueling speculation that Disney was moving toward a complete disassociation. Some fans wondered if studios were overreacting, arguing that the industry has harbored far more problematic figures in the past. The difference, many insiders countered, lies in timing and magnitude. In an era dominated by social media, controversies can spiral out of control in a matter of hours, altering public perception in ways that can devastate a film's box office prospects. Studios who invest hundreds of millions of dollars in production and marketing are increasingly risk-averse when it comes to what they see as liabilities. A star might be talented, but if they repeatedly generate negative press, that star power can mutate into a ticking time bomb that threatens not just a single film, but entire slates of planned releases. For Blumhouse, the decision to move on without Rachel was difficult but necessary. The studio has long prided itself on discovering fresh talent and producing edgy, conversation-starting films. Yet they also understand the delicate balance between creative risk-taking and brand preservation. With their horror trilogy touted as a potential game-changer, the last thing they wanted was for the public to associate the project solely with the actress at its center and her controversies, rather than the bold storytelling they hoped to deliver. Recasting the lead caused some delays, but executives insisted it was worth the short-term pain for long-term gains. They aimed to keep the focus on the script, the chilling atmosphere, and the innovative scares, rather than online squabbles that detract from the final product. Rachel's own attempts to control the narrative often ended up amplifying it instead. She occasionally went live on Instagram or gave interviews that tried to set the record straight, but the more she spoke, the more she unwittingly provided fresh sound bites for critics to latch onto. Her supporters, though still vocal, dwindled as major social media influencers and film commentators turned their attention elsewhere. Over time, her name became more synonymous with controversy than artistry.
We wrapped on a Tuesday, and then I moved to Poland on the Wednesday and started shooting.
Oh my
So it was a hard, goodbye that I feel like I mourned the wrap of Snow White while I was in the middle of kind of getting my bearings on the Hunger Games set.
In an industry that thrives on reinvention and carefully sculpted celebrity images, That kind of reputation is an almost impossible hurdle to overcome, especially for someone who isn't yet an established box office draw. What makes Rachel's downfall all the more cautionary is how quickly the tide shifted. Only a few years before, she was living a dream most young performers could scarcely imagine. Lauded by Steven Spielberg, nominated for awards and hailed by critics as a breakout sensation, the difference between then and now illustrates the velocity of modern fame. How easily it can be built through viral acclaim and how swiftly it can be dismantled by viral outrage. Hollywood may appear glamorous, but it's also unforgiving. And it seldom offers second chances without a long period of rehabilitation and regret. Some actors manage to rebuild their careers after public missteps, but that often requires a combination of contrite public apologies, strategic low-profile projects, and the passage of enough time for audiences to move on to the next scandal. Observers continue to debate whether Rachel's outspoken style could have been harnessed more effectively. Some say she merely needed better media training and a tighter filter for the statements she released. Others speculate that her personal convictions were always bound to clash with an industry that values polished, non-controversial figures, especially in leading roles for family-oriented content. Regardless, her situation underscores a dilemma faced by many modern actors: how to stay genuine in a world where every word is scrutinized and can be weaponized by detractors. Authenticity is a buzzword many celebrities aspire to, but the line between authenticity and self-immolation on social media is perilously thin.
I did. It was so fun. Oh my God, as a huge Disney fan, it was so exciting to finally get to go to D23. Yeah. I live on the East Coast, so I was never able to go, and also tickets sell out like in a flash. So it was so exciting to go, and my mom was super jealous because my mom is the reason I'm a Disney fan.
Compounding matters is the increasingly interconnected nature of fandom. Years ago, controversy might be confined to tabloid pages or fleeting gossip segments on TV. Today, fans across the globe organize around hashtags, coordinate petitions, and even pressure advertisers to withdraw support from projects. Studios keep a wary eye on these online movements because they can drastically affect a film's profitability. One trending hashtag can spook investors or scare off collaborators, setting off a chain reaction that leaves no room for an actor perceived as difficult or divisive. Rachel's pattern of incendiary remarks effectively guaranteed that any project she joined would come under instant online scrutiny, with many potential viewers already prepared to boycott or lambast it. As the list of canceled appearances and dropped contracts grew, commentators started labeling Rachel's career trajectory as one of the most dramatic Hollywood flameouts in recent memory. Some expressed sympathy, noting that she rose to fame young and perhaps lacked the guidance to navigate its treacherous waters. Others showed little patience, reasoning that her intelligence and media savvy should have been enough to warn her against alienating fan bases and major studios alike. Whichever side of the fence one lands on, the consensus is that her next steps, if she even has the opportunity to take them, will require a radical change in approach. She might pivot to smaller independent productions where artistic freedom is more valued than mass appeal, or attempt a carefully orchestrated redemption arc, perhaps stepping away from social media to let controversies die down. The entertainment industry at large also views Rachel's story as a bellwether for how it will handle controversies in the future. Recent years have shown a trend of zero tolerance for actions or statements deemed offensive by a vocal portion of the public. At the same time, there's a recognition that truly transformative art often stems from individuals unafraid to break norms or speak inconvenient truths. Finding the balance between encouraging creative risks and maintaining brand-safe reputations may well define the next decade of Hollywood's evolution. Some insiders predict that Rachel might follow a path similar to other actors who found themselves in the doghouse.
She was like, Jacqueline, if they play Getaway Car or Maroon, she's on crisis watch. Not only did she play Getaway Car, she also played Maroon. I was having a mental breakdown in the audience at MetLife Stadium.
Taking a hiatus, focusing on personal growth, then re-emerging in an entirely different context. It's a risky maneuver. Absence can make the heart grow fonder, but it can also make audiences forget. Others suggest she could double down on her convictions and carve out a niche in more politically engaged film circles. Though that route might never match the stratospheric heights of mainstream blockbusters, the key challenge is whether she can regain the trust of producers who sign checks and fans who buy tickets. Without both, any Hollywood comeback remains a distant prospect. Meanwhile, Blumhouse marches on with the horror trilogy that Rachel was originally slated to star in. Early buzz indicates that the new lead, who has yet to be named publicly, brings a different energy to the role, one more aligned with the studio's collaborative ethos. Filming will likely resume under a tighter schedule, with Blumhouse determined to sidestep any more controversies that might overshadow the ambitious plot twists they've planned. Their goal is to keep the conversation centered on jump scares, cleverly written scripts, and boundary-pushing direction, instead of headlines about feuds and boycotts. Although losing a high-profile star partway through development is never ideal, some at the studio believe this recast may be a blessing in disguise, freeing them from the public relations quagmire that Rachel's involvement created. For Rachel, the final outcome remains uncertain. Will her name be permanently etched on the roster of promising talents who imploded under the weight of controversy? Or will she learn to navigate the pressures of public scrutiny and stage an improbable return to favor? The length and severity of her ostracism will depend on multiple factors: the resilience of her remaining fan base, the willingness of smaller studios to give her another chance, and her own capacity for self-reflection. In an industry where perception can shift overnight, either for better or worse, she might find a path to redemption if she recalibrates her approach and demonstrates genuine respect for the projects she's a part of. Yet the cautionary tale will linger. Hollywood has changed. No longer can a star count on a carefully sculpted facade and behind-the-scenes fixes to restore their image after a major public misstep.
She's my best friend, and she's the one who sent me the casting notice and said, "Thank me when you're famous." It's the craziest thing ever that it came true in that weird way, and that's why I bring her everywhere, and she's the best ever. But yeah, I put myself on tape. It's the worst tape you've ever seen in your life. I have no idea how I got the part still, and it's being used to teach future casting directors at NYU.
The rapid-fire nature of social media and the intensely reactive climate around entertainment news make controversies more visible and far more enduring. One misquoted interview, one offensive tweet, or one combative encounter can spawn hundreds of memes, countless YouTube reaction videos, and trending hashtags that refuse to die. Even after apologies, clarifications, or retractions, the digital footprint remains, haunting an actor's every new project. Rachel's story serves as a stark reminder that talent alone isn't enough. Modern audiences want to feel invested in the people behind the performances. They seek authenticity, relatability, and respect, not only for them as consumers, but also for the cultural artifacts they love, whether it's a vintage Disney cartoon or a cult classic horror film. When an artist challenges that attachment, they risk igniting a backlash that can derail even the most promising career. For those watching her saga unfold, it's a testament to the volatile intersection of celebrity, commerce, and public opinion. For Rachel, it's a life-altering lesson in what can happen when freedom of expression collides with the unforgiving realities of Hollywood deal-making. Every day that passes without new announcements about major roles for Rachel deepens the impression that the industry has collectively moved on. Meanwhile, fan campaigns both defending and denouncing her continue to flare up online, though they seem to be diminishing as other controversies capture the public's fleeting attention. The film world remains a swirling vortex of rival productions, trending gossip, and endless speculation, leaving little room for redemption stories unless they are meticulously planned and executed at exactly the right time. As it stands, the door on her future in big-budget Hollywood blockbusters seems to be closing, if it hasn't already slammed shut. She could, in theory, pivot to stage productions where live performance might allow her to reconnect with audiences on a more intimate level. She might pursue roles in edgier indie films that welcome her brand of outspoken honesty, believing controversy can sometimes boost a smaller project's visibility. Or she might fade into the background for years, re-emerging only after enough water has passed under the bridge to give a comeback narrative a fighting chance. In any scenario, she faces an uphill battle to salvage a reputation battered by months of negative headlines. In the end, Rachel Zegler's rapid rise and equally swift tumble illustrate the promise and peril of fame in the digital age. For a while, it seemed she could do no wrong, championed by some of the biggest names in the business. But in the span of a few controversial statements and fraught online interactions, her once glowing opportunities evaporated. She became the face of a debate over whether actors should keep their opinions separate from their roles and whether studios should actively shield themselves from stars who prove polarizing. Now, her name is etched into industry lore, a reminder that Hollywood's adoration can vanish overnight, leaving cautionary tales in its wake. Perhaps she will rewrite her own story, challenging the narrative that her time in the spotlight is finished. If there's any silver lining, it's that Hollywood, for all its harsh judgments, also loves a comeback. Audiences are sometimes willing to forgive if they believe an actor has learned from past mistakes. The key question is whether Rachel can convincingly demonstrate that growth. Her career, once defined by brilliant potential, now hinges on her ability to navigate an entertainment world that prizes careful image management and conscientious public engagement as much as raw talent. Whether she ultimately finds redemption or sinks deeper into infamy is anyone's guess. But one thing remains sure. Her journey has become a watershed moment for an industry that thrives on stars, but has no patience for controversies that overshadow the art itself.